At the time I'm recording this, Assassin's Creed Shadows has been out for a few days. Obviously, I've talked about this game before, from the controversies around it, to the marketing, to just what was happening. And I do want a small disclaimer here at the beginning in multiple ways. I wanted to take a look at it in a couple different ways. First off, as a video game. Secondly, as a continuation of this series that I did grow up on playing. And also in terms of what's going on in the real world around this game. All three of those will be kind of combined in this first look at the game in terms of, is it worth buying? A series that I've done several times in the past, actually, on multiple games, from the MGS Master Collection to the Arkham Trilogy to all kinds of stuff. So, if you're new to the channel, I know that this is a game that is controversial to a lot of people. I ask that you at least try to engage people with some common courtesy and some intellectual honesty, because I'm not going to get into arguments with people over this video game. That said, if you enjoy this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, I appreciate that. There will be several ways to support this channel if you do want to, which I will show through the video and in the comments. Things like our store, which I'll talk about at the end, things like our Amazon link, our Fortnite code, etc. So lots of stuff there. I appreciate you, and I appreciate our members who have been supporting the content. Well, thank you to you here. But let's hop into it with our question of the day, which is, overall, what do you think about this game? Because for me, I found myself a little conflicted on parts of this game. Now, to be fair, I have bought Assassin's Creed games at full price before, but this time, because of everything going on around it, I had a month of the Ubisoft Plus premium crap. I hate those memberships and stuff, but I had a month of it, so I decided to play the game through that. Now, that said, that they gave me some kind of deluxe edition skin because of that. So if you see that in the video, they gave me some kind of red dragon skin, which I thought was cool just for being on that membership thing. Now, this game has obviously been subject to a lot of controversy, so going into it, I didn't really know what to expect, other than the fact that Ubisoft marketed it very poorly. They did a very bad job connecting with their audience and with a worldwide audience who maybe wasn't used to Assassin's Creed games, and I knew it was an RPG. Now, coming off of Mirage, I think that this is a little bit of a jolt for people, because it's not that we expected Mirage to be the new style, like there were no more RPGs, but I do think that with Mirage, it was kind of a breath of fresh air, where it did combine certain RPG elements with the more classic style of Assassin's Creed, where you weren't really worrying about what level someone was or how much damage you did. I mean, there was damage, but it wasn't really the idea of, oh, I went into this area that's higher leveled than me, I'm just gonna get screwed. It was more like an assassin's playground, and I really did appreciate that. And when it comes to Shadows, there are things that it does do very well. Like, for example, I think things like the stealth in this game are actually done, for the most part, good. Now, here's the thing. Like any Ubisoft game, there's going to be clips out there, and there's going to even be clips I can find in my own footage of glitches or problems with the game, whether it be just out in the world or during the stealth or whatever. But there were elements that they did add into the stealth that I thought enhanced the game. For example, being able to go prone and lay down on a rooftop, I thought was done very well. Like, I thought it was a very good addition to the stealth, where it actually adds an element of sneaking around in almost a playground type setting, you know, like hide and seek. But at the same time, because that's new, and because it's Ubisoft, it's also one of those things where it's like the mechanic doesn't work perfectly. And I guess you could expect that, but when you're laying down on a roof, if you try to climb over a ledge or something like that on the roof, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It's frustrating, but the improvement in the stealth mechanics I think is very good. It's something I've noticed for a while, and ever since they did add dedicated crouching, I believe it was back in Unity. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was back in Unity. I do think that adding dedicated crouching helped the stealth in general, and I also think that now adding going prone, even though it's taken them this long, is something that could benefit the stealth long term. It's just that it reminds me a lot of Assassin's Creed 3, where they added the kind of tall grass stuff and Connor would walk in and they crouch down. I believe they were called stalking zones. Then they were in AC4 and things like that on that same general era of AC, right? But it's like when you introduce a mechanic to the stealth in the series, I've noticed that it's always not the absolute best the first time it's introduced, and then it gets better over time. That's kind of what I think is going on here with this stealth. Now, I wouldn't put this game up there for mechanics with something like Metal Gear Solid or Splinter Cell or anything like that, but something I was thinking about actually is that with those games, they are top tier stealth games that focus almost entirely on stealth, right? Well, when it comes to Assassin's Creed, this is basically set throughout history. Now, it's a fictional history, it's altered, things like that, but it is in different periods of history. I can't play Metal Gear Solid and play as Venom Snake and go out into an era of feudal Japan. I can't play Metal Gear Solid and play as Solid Snake and go out into, you know, maybe a pirate game, right? Like, they're just totally different. And that's kind of where I think Assassin's Creed can work as a stealth franchise if they're willing to keep improving it. I mean, they might not ever hit that level of something like MGS or Splinter Cell, where it's like that was the core ethos of the game that they focused on. But I do think that it is improving, and that improvement right there, I think, is good. Like, it's one of the things this game does very well that I wanted to highlight. One of the other things that I think is fun is that I do really believe that the combat is fun, and I do believe that it does kind of capture this almost samurai type or shinobi type combat where it's this face-off type thing. However, if you've played games like Ghost of Tsushima, which is always compared to this game, this is still the RPG combat of Assassin's Creed. It's just slightly tweaked. Like, if you love the dueling in Ghost of Tsushima, where again, you have a game where it has like that mechanic and it's one of the core elements of it, I don't feel like this reaches those levels. You know, like, this is kind of combining good things from different series, but I also found that sometimes as far as a mechanic, for Shadows that is, it's not doing those things as good as any of those other games that focus on just the one thing, right? Again, I use Splinter Cell, for example, where it's really good stealth gameplay. Well, in Splinter Cell, I have really good stealth gameplay, but it's not like I'm going to get into a duel in feudal Japan, right? So it's one of those things where I think that this game tries to be a jack of all trades, and some it does well, but I don't really think it's mastering any of them specifically. Now, that said, I do think the gameplay is fun. I think it's enjoyable. I've seen a lot of people call this a return to form or all of these different keywords that are thrown around. A lot of games journalists are using the same kind of titles for this game. I don't really get where they're getting that from. Like, to me, this isn't classic Assassin's Creed. I don't see where you're getting return to form from. If I was going to use that, or a celebration of Assassin's Creed, which, you know, is something I've used before, a celebration of, I would use Mirage for that. And Mirage, not to compare this game entirely to Mirage, it's interesting because Mirage was done on such a lower budget, such a smaller scale, and yet I do feel like it managed to be more of an Assassin's Creed game. Assassin's Creed Shadows, for me, it feels like it was a RPG based on Japan that somewhere in development someone said we could make this an AC game. Now, I don't think that's what happened, because there's too many elements ingrained into the game that are just core Assassin's Creed. For example, the Animus stuff, or the Eagle Vision, or, you know, the Hidden Blade, any of these things, right? There's too many mechanics that revolve around Assassin's Creed, but I'm talking about the story. The story so far where I'm at, they haven't really even mentioned the Hidden Ones or the Creed or anything like that by name at all, actually. Because for me, with these early reviews, with these Is It Worth Buying, I usually haven't finished the entire game, but I've put a lot of hours into it. I've put a lot of hours into this game, and I've been having fun. I've actually really been enjoying exploring Japan. I've really been enjoying the stealth a lot, like going around to these castles, which are basically fortresses, and you know, going through them and sneaking around and taking out these specific key enemies, I think is really fun, especially with the addition of the expert stealth mode, where like they can look up at roofs now, rooftops. You can turn that off, But that kind of stuff I've been having fun with, like as a gameplay experience of going around, sneaking, enjoying the setting, things like that, and some of the characters. But I haven't really felt like an assassin. I haven't really felt like I'm part of something bigger at all. In fact, this story is very, very much keyed kind of like Assassin's Creed 2 was in that way. And that's kind of where I will give it the benefit of the doubt, because it is very much a revenge storyline for Naoe. And Naoe, to me, has been the main character of the game. Yasuke is in this game, and that's kind of where I think a lot of the controversy comes from, which I will talk about in a minute. But like for the first 12 hours of this game, at least, I played pretty much exclusively as Naoe. There was a 10-minute segment at the beginning where I played as Yasuke because it was just the tutorial, like they forced you to. Basically 11 hours after that on, I had no option to even play as that character. So that's something that's weird to me about the story, is I've actually liked the story for what it is so far. I've really liked the revenge elements. I've loved Naoe. I thought she's actually a really fun character. I'm sure that some people don't like her, but I really do. I think the voice actress does a great job. I think that it's a cute character. Like, I really think she's pretty. I don't know, I've seen a lot of people shit on her and not like her looks. I've liked her. I've liked how she talks. I like how she acts. I like how she looks. I think she's a well-designed, good character that does carry this game. And unfortunately, even though, yes, I know Japan and China are wildly different, I feel like in terms of her almost ninja-like style of gameplay, goes to show that a Xiao Jun game would absolutely work in an open world China. You know, like there's something I've been asking for years. So as an Assassin's Creed fan of the franchise, there's things in here that I'm like, oh, this would work as a proof of concept for something else. Oh, this is a big improvement of gameplay. Oh, this maybe could be done better. But I also feel like it's frustrating that the era of RPGs other than Origins, it does feel like it's just games set in the Assassin's Creed world, not focusing as much on those elements. And it does actually make me wonder why it was so bad for, you know, things like Watch Dogs or things like Far Cry, where they had different Easter eggs hinting, oh, this could be in the same world as Assassin's Creed. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Or even for Watch Dogs, they were just basically straight up saying, this is in the world of Assassin's Creed. Look, there's an Abstergo executive you have to take out. Or look, you know, there's the assassins contacting you, things like that. And then Ubisoft later on going, actually, it's not the same universe. That was an Easter egg, where they clearly wanted it to be the same universe, but then they pussied out of it. It's weird to me where, like, these Assassin's Creed games, like, they're all allowed to exist as part of this big universe, even if they don't have a ton to do in a lot of points of their story with the assassins or with the things going on in that universe. They're just games set in that universe. And that's kind of, to me, where this game did frustrate me, where I'm like playing it and, you know, for the first 12 to 15 hours, there's very little to do with the Creed or with the assassins or the hidden ones or anything. And I'm kind of thinking, why is it okay for this series to do that? But then when we want the other games connected that we love, like Watch Dogs fans, I'm a big fan of Watch Dogs 1. I will always advocate for that game. When we advocate for a game like that, it's like, no, sorry, it doesn't have the AC logo on it. It can't be included, but we'll keep referencing it. I guess I just don't get what Ubisoft is doing with some of their other games connected to this universe because of what Shadows is, and because of what things like Valhalla are. Now, that said, something I noticed about this game is that there was a big controversy about Yasuke. Now, there were also these other things too going into it, and I've talked about them ad nauseum in other videos, so I'm not going to focus on it a ton, but things like the architecture in this game, the world, I thought that those were beautiful. I thought that the world is well done. Will it age the best? Probably not, you know, because when you look at Ghost of Tsushima, it's a little bit of a more stylized art. I could see that aging better, kind of like turning on Sly Cooper right now, which is a cartoon type game, or Borderlands. Obviously, they're going to age better than a new Call of Duty that tries to look realistic. That's just the nature of style. So it's like, I've seen people complain about the world and things like that. I'm not a history major. I find history fascinating, but I've always played these games understanding that some things are historically accurate and some absolutely are not. And when it comes down to Yasuke, the way that he was marketed and the way that people spoke about him prior to this game coming out, I would have thought that this game portrayed him as Black Jesus, as if he was a savior sent to Japan to save all of these poor little Japanese people who couldn't do it themselves. And LOL, we really owned the Japanese men by putting in this black protagonist. Like, that's how I saw all these YouTubers talking about it. That's how I saw all these people on Twitter talking about it. Hell, that's even, honestly, at times, the way that Ubisoft made the marketing look like he was just the main character. And I actually feel like some of this was based around a bit of, believe it or not, misogyny. And I don't mean the people talking about it, I mean Ubisoft, because they marketed this game wildly around Yasuke. Now, this is something that you'd see as well in the past, where you had something like even Ivor, where it was canon that it was a woman, right? But they never really marketed it around female Ivor. They showed you male Ivor, the male strong Viking. And I kind of think that that's just Ubisoft again. In the past, they admitted that they think women won't sell a game as much as men. Like, putting a man on the cover of a game will sell the game better. And they've said that before, basically in stockholder type meetings or phone calls or whatever. I can even show you a thing here. So for me with Yasuke, I think that what they were doing was, I think they were going in on that same strategy of marketing of like, well, we're mainly aiming for men to buy this game. And if we put a man on the cover, we put a man at the front of the trailers and make him look like a cool samurai, that'll work out and they'll buy it. And I don't really think it worked for them. I think what ended up happening was you have all this culture war stuff, which I'm not going to say I've never participated in. Like, there are topics I will talk about around it, absolutely. But I think that this game was wildly weaponized for that. And I think it was done so on both sides. Like, there were people ready to defend this game right away because Yasuke is black, and there were people ready to dislike it right away, I think actually for the same reason. There were other people who dislike it because of historical stuff, etc. But I feel like there's a lot of people also just kind of using that as an excuse to be mad at the game. And Yasuke in this game is interestingly, he's treated like garbage. So it's very weird to me where it's like, if you're looking at Yasuke as an example of like, wow, what a strong heroic character. He was kind of like Black Jesus or like a savior. I don't really get that out of him. He's very misguided. He kind of just follows orders, does what he's told, hasn't really thought for himself that much for a lot of the story, especially. And where, like, I would say that he is a fish out of water who doesn't know what to do. You know, like, he really was, he started out as a slave. I mean, Oda Nobunaga, the guy basically brought him in because he thought he looked scary. Like, that's why he was made into a warrior, because he notices, oh, well, I'm in danger when Oda Nobunaga makes a threat. And then Nobunaga, like, sees that as a positive, and he likes his skin color. And he doesn't like his skin color in the way of like, that's pretty. He likes his skin color in the way of like, wow, you're weird looking to me. Like, it's very, it is racist. I mean, because like at the time it was just something that was so different, right? I mean, like, it was the idea that very few black people had ever been to Japan at the time. So he even asked him questions like, where you're from, like, are you an anomaly, or are there other people who look like you? Like, basically, like, he talks to him like he's a freaking mutant. So it's interesting to me playing this, and, you know, like, for the first 12 hours, there's really almost no Yasuke, and even when he is in the game, he's talked to like he's the weirdest person in Japan by people. And I'm not saying that about black people, but what I'm saying is, for people who didn't like this game and who were mad because they were like, why'd you choose the black guy? You know, like, oh, look, they're going to treat him like a savior. He's not at all. I feel like people had a very different understanding of what this game would be and decided on that element of it before the game came out. Now, that's not to say that this guy doesn't have heroic attributes or that he doesn't end up making decisions himself in the story and contributing. I'm just saying, like, for the first 12 to 15 hours, especially if you're doing some side stuff, things like that as well, it's not exactly like he's presented as a savior who comes in and saves Japan. In fact, both of these characters are a little bit complex, and I would say a little bit conflicted on who they are. Like, Naoe has this front about her that she's here to help with the item she lost with her father, and she has this front about her that she's trying to help Japan, and in a way she is, But through her actions, you can also see a lot of it is a vengeance story of, you took something from me, now I will take it from you. And it's a very human story on that level. And Yasuke is a human story in the way of like just a guy trying to play his cards right so he doesn't get killed, because he was put in a situation where he was a slave, and then he's basically a slave again, except now he's a slave with a sword. He's not exactly treated the best. So it's interesting to me to see the response behind that controversy on both sides. And I feel like Yasuke doesn't represent for either side of the American political spectrum what they wanted him to. Like, for the hardcore left who are going to rally behind a character like this no matter what, he's not the savior. And for the hardcore right that are going to be mad about a character like this no matter what, he's not the savior. He's just a very very different character. His gameplay is one that you do have to interact with for certain elements in the world, like the more brutal gameplay of like being a strong man, but it's not gameplay that you have to interact for a lot of it. Like, many activities are Naoe only or choosable. There's a lot less that are Yasuke only. There are some, but there's a lot less. And like, he can't even do viewpoints or things like this. It's more like playing as a ally of the main assassin. I would argue that Naoe is the primary character of this game, and Yasuke is like if 2/3 of the primary character focus was on Naoe, I would say Yasuke gets maybe like 1/3, maybe. It's just not what everything was hyped up to be in the trailers or in the controversy or anything like that. So overall for me, I do think that the game is fun. I do think it's good. I actually genuinely do. But I also, when I play it, notice glitches. I notice things that could be better. When I see reviewers calling it a masterpiece, I really haven't found that for me for the game. But I have thought it's a very fun game. I've loved feudal Japan. I found that very interesting. I'm sure there's things that are historically inaccurate. There always have been in every Assassin's Creed. That's never been a problem for people until now. The romance stuff, for example, like, is some of it forced if you interact with it? Probably, yeah, but you don't have to interact with any of it. You can choose to interact with no romance at all. I think this game is hurt most by the RPG features again, even though they're fun. Things like, I don't want to go to this area and interact with this thing because I'm just a much lower level, so I need to grind to get my level up, then I can go over there. That kind of stuff, I know some people don't like that at all. I'm a big RPG fan, so I'm fine with it. But when you come off of an older Assassin's Creed game, or you even come off of Mirage, those are the biggest things that hold this game back to me, is that you're going from a kind of open world sandbox RPG-ish game with Mirage. You're going into a game where now you have to manage those different things. You have to manage those numbers, those gear slots, etc. It's fun for me, but I can definitely see why that would be a turnoff to a lot of people. I find myself frustrated with this franchise because I do still like these games. However, I do think we're hitting the point where they need a reboot at some point, because they are very clearly going back on certain elements that they in the past were adamant about. Like, for example, I know one of the controversies in this game was people worried that you disrespect shrines. Well, this game very, very much wants you to go to shrines, meditate, pray at them, do things like that. And even from praying at them, you can get a boost, like an attribute buff, which to me is a very clear indication of, I don't know how to say this. I guess you could say it's all in a character's head. Like, they get the buff because they believe in this and it's not real to them or in their world. But like, Assassin's Creed has been very like non-religious for a long time, where it'll be like, oh yeah, Jesus, he was just a guy who used the Shroud of Eden. Oh, you know, this character, well, they weren't really powerful. They just did this. Oh, this god, that was just an Isu. This legend, it was just an Isu, or it was a guy with an Isu artifact, or it was nothing. They've done that for a long time and remained largely agnostic or atheistic, and that's fine. However, now in this RPG era, they're very clearly going back on what they want it to be. Like, for example, you might have seen me riding on a dragon in some of the gameplay, because they gave me that for getting the game through the Ubisoft Plus crappy membership thing. I don't like these memberships, but I used it for this, right? And they gave me a dragon mount for that. Or like, they'll give you special swords that do special abilities that aren't even pieces of Eden. And my point is it's very clear that they want to have spiritual elements in Assassin's Creed now, but they don't know how to do it because they spent so many years saying, no, that god's not real. No, that's just an Easter artifact. Don't think about it. There's no spiritualism. They spent so many years doing that now they want to sell you on some of this spiritualism stuff, like a dragon or a special cosmetic or whatever. And for me, I just feel like at that point, you could do the opposite. Like, Supernatural, for example, was a show where instead of saying nothing was real, they just kind of said, well, maybe everything is real, just in a different way when it comes to spiritualism. And it kind of feels like Assassin's Creed wants to do that now, but they've written themselves into a corner. And I found that for a lot of things in this series is they've been writing themselves into corners. And I feel like the real way to go in the future is, other than keeping adding to this series, other than keeping remaking games like the AC4 remake, which is supposedly happening, the AC1 remake that's been rumored forever, I actually think that this game right here is a strong indicator that they need to do a reboot at some point, because they want to bring elements back to the franchise that I don't think they know how to do, that I truly think would be better served with a reboot. Overall, I like the game. I think it's good. I think it's fun. For classic fans of the series, the RPG stuff might frustrate you. I completely understand. I do think that the controversy around this game overall was totally blown out of proportion. People are free to feel how they want. I do believe the Japanese people in general deserve respect. However, I also, in terms of my own opinion, when it comes to history, do believe that there are some times where it's just a game, and it's okay for it to be different from what actually happened. I think that Ubisoft did a poor job of communicating that, though. I think they did a poor job of actually explaining what their series is to an audience that's not used to it. I think they did a poor job of a lot of things over the years, and this game doesn't change that. Actually, a final thought on that, the modern day story is terrible. It's absolutely horrendous in this. I don't know why we don't just drop it entirely at this point. We're back to being some faceless nobody in the Animus. I don't care. You interact with that through the stupid launcher. I don't care about that. I cared about it when it was someone like Desmond or Layla, or tangentially when you were an employee at Abstergo in AC4. I don't care about being some nameless nobody who's in the Animus who doesn't matter. So like there's right there an example of something done terribly, is the modern day story. But the gameplay, fun. I love the stealth editions. I love the world. I really do like the characters, especially Naoe. I've liked a lot of the cosmetics. I've liked a lot of the things that I interact with. A lot of the content I've interacted with has felt very fun, and I haven't actually found myself enjoying stealth gameplay like this for a while, except when I revisited MGS5 recently, or when I revisited actually Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes over on our Let's Play channel, which if you want more content like this, there is a whole playlist right here of Is It Worth Buying, but also as well, I do have a Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays, where we play through games podcast style, hanging out, talking to each other, me and my friends, and having a good time. And that's somewhere right there where you can check out more stuff we do. We also have our store, cosmobunny.shop, where we sell coasters, keychains, trays, and more from recycled paper. These are from comics, manga, magazines, and more books that were unable to be sold because they were damaged. We take the paper that is undamaged or survived, we make something new out of it through a new transformative medium, and we recycle the rest. I hope this video was enjoyable for you. Overall, I like the game. I'm not blown away by it, but I do think it's fun, and I do hope to like it even more as I play it more. And I don't want to be middle of the road on it. I want it to be clear, I really have enjoyed the game. It's just that as a longtime fan, there's been a lot of things that frustrate me about it too. And a lot of the reception around it has frustrated me because I feel like no matter what is said about it, people on both sides want to be angry. And for me, especially in America, it feels like that's more and more the case, where you can't talk about something without it being a big fight. And I'm kind of bored of that. Like, things can have a deeper meaning, but at the end of the day, this is Assassin's Creed, It's like if you didn't like the last few, you're not going to like it. If you did like the last few, you'll probably enjoy it. Let me know what you think down there. Have a fantastic day. I hope to see you on the other channels. As always, everyone, stay shui.